I'd love to learn a little bit more about Wavix.
What has been your company's biggest obstacle in time?
What are some of the challenges that you're currently facing? Hey, Vincent, I'm super excited to be chatting with you today. A couple weeks ago, we started having a conversation on outsourcing and telecommunications companies, and we came to the conclusion that there was a lot of stereotypes that are centered around both of our industries. So before we kind of get into our questions, I'd love to learn a little bit more about Wavix.
It's nice to connect with you again, Mimi. We're a cloud communications platform. We focus on two main communication channels, which are voice and SMS. For voice, we provide bulk SMS, one-time password, two-factor authentication, and transactional SMS. Whereas for voice, we provide a global coverage, which allows our users to call with a local number or an international number. We also have a couple of value-added services, which couples with our voice and SMS solution, helps increase productivity while significantly reducing operational costs. This is a more simplified way of explaining what we are and what we do.
So Filta is an outsourcing company, and so we help businesses build teams globally. And we can do that through a set of services, through recruitment, employer of records, employee engagement. And so we can hire with technical and non-technical roles. And so we primarily, I would say our specialty is Colombia and the Philippines, but we do actually outsource on another global scale. So we can outsource UK, kind of like wherever you are out in the globe. I'm really now excited kind of to dive into some of the common stereotypes that we have in our industries. What are some of the challenges that you're currently facing?
I'd say one of the challenges that we're facing is just handling spam calls and robot calls. This is a challenge, and it's also an opportunity because it makes us improve our compliance and develop better control of our network. We constantly monitor calls and SMS campaign just to educate our neural networks further and enhance our products. So this way, the system understands what appears to be a spam call or robot call or what isn't. So we constantly try to level up just to catch up with what's out there. What has been your company's biggest obstacle and how have you managed to overcome them?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I have been currently facing firsthand is when I'm reaching out to a partner, right, or a company, they automatically think that I'm trying to sell them on something. And it's really difficult because I understand that in the past, maybe outsourcing companies have done a lot of, cold calling and this, and partnerships isn't really common in outsourcing companies, but because our industries have them, right, that's where we're trying to fill the gap. And so I think another big part of that is learning how to educate other companies on what outsourcing and nearshoring is. I would say that is my biggest challenge, but it's really taught me to be a lot more creative with my approach, with my outreach. But yeah, I would say that's my biggest challenge. I am now really curious to know, how do you, and I'm sure you get this question a lot, but how do you ensure the security and privacy of your customer data?
So here at Wavix, we take our customer data security and privacy seriously. We do that by storing as little customer data as possible. We also follow a lot of compliance standards, which are like PCI compliance or GDPR compliance. We also recently, we're in the process of obtaining the ISO certification, which further solidifies our commitment to international security standards. We've also built a very robust access management system and implemented two-factor authentication for user access, as well as offering it as a service.
Well, that's actually really cool to know, because I think it's important, right, when you're talking to other companies, ensuring that, this is a priority, right? This is a question and a concern that everybody has. So really, really key to know.
I'm just wondering, what makes Filta stand out amongst other staffing companies?
Filta does really well is bringing a sense of community to their people and to our staff members. And so one of the things that we started seeing is that there was a gap between, people who were sitting on the other side of the world. And so to kind of fill that gap, we created an engagement piece of Filta. And through this engagement piece, staff members have access to wellness support, educational sessions, professional development. And through that, it creates a sense of belonging for the staff member, right? There is already a challenge of having such distance between the staff member and the company. And a lot of the times the staff member can't, get on a flight and fly to them and be a part of them. And so with that, these staff members are able to be in community with other Filta staff members, also build that trust, right? Build that trust with the company and others. And so I think that's what Filta helps Filta stand out, is that we make that a priority.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, that's a nice approach, I'd say.
Yeah, it is. It is nice, just to be like, oh yeah, I got friends on the other side of the world. That's also another thing. It's like, even with us, like we're sitting on 2 different continents, and being able to get to know each other and have these conversations, I think are really key. So super cool. So now that technology is advancing, right? Mm-hmm. How does your company stay current with all of these advancements that are happening specifically in technology?
Over at our end, we've actually invested significantly in AI technology and research. We have a dedicated department that focuses on machine learning just to push the boundaries of innovation. This strategic investment ensures that Wavix stays on the forefront of technology advancements, offering cutting-edge access to our customers. We've also designed Wavix around API. This means that we're ready for the future and integrate with other new technologies as they come out. We are currently working on supporting Bring Your Own Bot as a service. So users can add some sort of conversational AI voice bot to our platform.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think one of the things that is really important is for companies to learn how to stay, on top of these, because it seems like, if companies are not staying ahead of the game, there's more likely that they're not going to get chosen to do business with. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but I just feel like that's where technology is going, right? And I think a lot of us are trying to stay educated and trying to stay just on top of that. So really cool to know that.
How do you ensure that the staffs are qualified for the assigned roles?
So what our recruitment process looks like is we sit down with the company. We first sit down with the company and our recruiters sit down. And we do this thing called a BPAR workshop. And a BPAR workshop is sitting down with the client and getting super clear on what the expectations are, what the job role is, what strengths and weaknesses, what they consider that role to be. Do they want someone who is a graduate, who is a senior, who is an advanced role? We get this workshop literally lasts about an hour to 2 hours, but we're really trying to get super clear about what this company is specifically looking for. And so once that part has been done, then we move on now to the recruitment aspect of the actual staff member. And so we do screening resumes. And once a recruiter screens a resume and they pass the screening, then we go on to an interview with the recruiter. And once that staff member passes that, then they get to do a second interview with the company. And then the company then can there determine and figure out if this is a good fit or not. Right. So let's say that the client or the staff member does pass, then we actually do an assessment. And this assessment is really just to test their skills, their knowledge. So if this is a graphic designer, they are doing a graphic design test. If this is a developer, they're doing a development test. And this test usually lasts about 1 to 2 hours. So it's very, very, intentional. And then, of course, we're doing reference checks, and then we do background checks. I believe they're also known as police checks in other countries. And then we actually do an offer. But again, it goes back to how intentional we're being, right? And I think that trust, because it's such an intense process, that trust is also returned from that staff member. But yeah, it's a really, really just intense way to,
it's the right people.
Get the right person. Yeah. Yeah. The weather has been crazy out here in LA, and there's been a lot of power outages. And that led me to my next question is, how does your internal team handle technical issues or outages?
In this case, we actually build our infrastructure to be sort of resilient to power outage or some other form of natural disaster, however it might be. We have our data centers in different geographical locations, so globally. We provide backup and help to avoid this type of outage. We also have a team that proactively monitors our system 24/7 just to ensure that Wavix can identify and resolve issues promptly, which in turn helps to minimize customers' impact. So we wouldn't want a situation where our users will be down for a couple of hours or minutes. It will hurt a bit, so we tend to speed up whatever process, or we tend to look out for any potential disaster that might obstruct the flow of communications, and we stop it beforehand, or if we're a little bit late by a couple of minutes or seconds, we tend to fix it as soon as we can so that our users can continue doing their business as usual without being affected significantly.
That's actually really great to know. And I think even working for a global company, right, we have those resources to be able to gather different hub spots, different centers, and to have that flexibility to be able to get to that issue as right away.
What are the benefits of staff outsourcing? Because as much as I know, most companies, if not all, they do have their internal HR teams.
With this, I always like to give people just different options when it comes to actually outsourcing. And so the beauty of Filta is that, you can hire just for recruitment, or you can actually hire just for HR. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. But the other part is that when you're outsourcing for a staff member, right, or just in general, there's three things that I always like to give people. And the first one is access to specialized experiences. And outsourcing really allows companies to access specialized skills and the knowledge that they might not be able to have in-house, really enabling to complete tasks and skills more effectively and efficiently. The second thing is that it's scalability and flexibility, right? Outsourcing really provides companies to be able to scale up as much as they need to, or scale down based on business needs. And it's easier to do that with outsourcing, right? Because again, it allows you flexibility. And then of course, the last thing that I always like to tell people is there is a cost savings in terms of it. Outsourcing can be more cost effective, but those are technically the routes that why I feel outsourcing companies are beneficial. Of course, there are 100 more things that I can probably talk about, but those are just kind of like the main things that, that come up a lot in our conversations. Well, I'm super glad that we were able to, sit down and have this conversation about both of our industries and companies. And hopefully, we were able to break a little bit more of the stereotypes. But I do want people to know that if they wanted to reach out and ask more questions, where could they find you?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can check our website, www.wavix.com. And we have a 24/7 support team for a team of hardworking staff that will be able to guide you to the right person.
And of course, if you have any questions, you can always find me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to us at www.filta.com.